Negotiations have been ongoing since the refuge closed in February. While the federal and state governments argued finances, dozens of homeless teenagers were sent to other towns or returned to the streets. The state member for Myall Lakes says the centre should never have been allowed to close in the first place.
I think it does a service. It's not there for just a halfway house for wayward kids. It is there to catch those kids that have really got problems and to try and then put them back into their family life.
The state government has now granted $47,000 to the refuge. A Manning Support Services spokesperson says with the wheels in motion, the refuge could advertise for staff positions within a few weeks.
We've showed our good faith as the state government. If it's not sufficient, then the federal government should top up, and then we can talk about it opening.
The Manning Emergency Accommodation Service will take over the centre's management. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
Passengers and crew gathered at Port Macquarie RSL for a pre-departure dinner to meet and mingle with their travelling companions and finalise details. In its third year, the charity trip is about to take flight. Organiser John Ross says the flight has two main purposes.
The theme of the flight is to really raise the money for the charities, but in doing so, go somewhere where people like to go, which is unique, and have a lot of fun in doing it.
On board the chartered plane, pilot Wayne Kearns says the 237 passengers will be in for a special treat.
Well, this year we're going to go up to Cairns and back over 3 days, and the flying highlight of it is that we're going to fly up the coast, the east coast of Australia, at a much lower level than 767s normally fly at.
But while the passengers will be enjoying a tropical holiday, the real winners will be the three organisations set to benefit from the $30,000 the trip is expected to raise. Ronald McDonald Houses, Mid-North Coast Life Education and the Koala Preservation Society of New South Wales will share the proceeds of the increasingly popular Feel Good Getaway. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
A toast to a new era for rugby union in Newcastle. "270 people attended the club's official launch. On display the new colours, the distinctive red and blue, similar to the Knights and the Breakers. Welcoming the club was one of the legends of the game, Phil Hawthorne. Newcastle's first clash in the extended state comp is April 1st next year, probably against Gordon. President Ian Neil hopes to get a good response from fans at home games.
Initially we've got ambitions of about 2,000 people maybe to a game, and certainly when we have teams like Randwick and Gordon, maybe 5,000 people.
Meanwhile, the New South Wales rugby team has arrived in Newcastle for its clash with Western Samoa at Marathon Stadium tonight. Selectors have given the top footballers a rest, ready for the test on Saturday. It's a chance for young untried players to make their mark.
I guess it's more of a B lineup. They've given guys from the country an opportunity, which is great. But we've been together for a week or so and we've trained quite strongly.
The game starts at 7:30. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Max, where did he actually injure himself?
He broke the bone just behind his knee here. He can actually see that this knee's a lot larger than the other one. Heard of. The vets didn't know too much about it, but the vet that done the job on him done a marvellous job, I'm honest, and it's just a matter of...
The Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation School Development Officer Bruce Tracy on his first day on the job. Bruce was at Barnsley Primary giving some tips on the game. His priority?
Teach the kids to enjoy the game and give them a few extra skills, and maybe a few more might play over weekends.
A member of the 1970 Aussie World Cup squad, Bruce has also been approached to coach a junior side for the national competition. Depending on the Breakers' future, he'll put a side together for the Soccer Federation.
Big step, and I think it's going to be good for soccer in Newcastle, because I think we've got to have somewhere for the kids to go in the game.
The proposal to test medical practitioners for HIV twice a year comes after an infected Sydney doctor treated 149 women before he knew his condition.
I think this is an overreaction, and I fear that the administrators and bureaucrats are more concerned about their own jobs and well-being than they are for the rights and well-being of the people concerned.
Dr. David Sutherland says there has never been a documented case of transmission from an infected doctor to a patient. He says this is because the risks are extremely low.
There is no surgical procedure that has zero risk. There are risks in getting into our cars and driving, but we know about those risks. By comparison, the risk of this is much less than the risk of getting in your car and driving to Taree or Sydney.
Dr. Sutherland says regular tests would force some doctors to deceive the system in a bid to keep their jobs.
If they know a positive test will mean that they can't work, what's to stop them sending along their friend or their mum or somebody else? I mean, I can draw blood from anybody in my rooms and send it off with my name on, can't I?
Dr. Sutherland says if anything has come out of the Sydney doctor's case, it's the fact the community still hasn't come to terms with the concept of HIV and AIDS. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Nine, 11 and 1, the Quinella paying $68.60, the trifecta $654.80. Next we went to Canterbury for race 8, the riding for the disabled plate. Gary Harley's tip Blue Mantle finishing second and paying $1.40. The trifecta returned a handy $1,231.20.
Yes, very sincere thanks, mate. than that, you look at it. Thanks, Cliff. To the Scaines family, still no longer mayor, was mayor of Gloucester, years of age, who enjoyed good health for the first...
Neil Ridgway never had a chance. He drove his car into his garage in Maryland. Seconds later, there was an explosion. Neighbours and fire crews did everything they could to douse the blaze, but the fire took hold on the weatherboard house. Neil's body was discovered in the ruins of the garage. The 39-year-old computer teacher left behind a wife and a 5-year-old daughter. His death has also left the city's soccer community in shock. Vic Ether has been the secretary of the Lambton Jaffers Soccer Club for the past 10 years, while Neil had been president. He can't believe Neil's gone.
It was just a freaky sort of a thing, and it's hard to come to terms with the fact that it could happen to someone so young. That life is so fragile.
Mr. Ether says Neil Ridgway will be remembered as a man who gave everything to his community.
Neil was the sort of person that would do anything for anyone. He would never say a bad word about anyone, and he was always there to lend a hand, and community-minded, and devoted sort of a family man as well.
It could be weeks before the cause of the inferno is known. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Wallace Lake oyster farmers met last night to discuss the draft management plan. Compiled by a professor from the Sydney University of Technology, some of the recommendations have met with approval. A more vigorous approach to promoting the Wallace Lake oyster is a priority, but proposed changes to established practices, such as moving from growing oysters on trays to stick leases, would require the permission of the Great Lakes Council, and that's upsetting the local oyster industry.
The council's got enough things on their plate without worrying about our industry. Our industry is very successful. We lead the industry. We've got the biggest production figures on the east coast of Australia, and we're doing it very well, and everyone says we are, so I just hope council will leave us alone and let us run our own race.
Mr Barclay says Wallace Lake produces 30,000 bags of oysters each year at a value of $10 million. The draft management plan may become a model for other estuaries along the New South Wales coast.
The fisheries and OMAC want to look at it next week in Sydney. They don't agree with a lot of the things, and the things I just mentioned they don't agree with. There's a few more things there, but I think it can all be fixed up.
Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
The prominence of the Mater Hospital will continue to grow as well, because it's... Before I say a lot about the Mater, I would like to offer you my congratulations and thanks for the show going on at the present time.
Thank you very much. The hospital is well noted for its care of the
After last year's near washout, today's brilliant sunshine saw the crowds turn out as never before. The Coffs Harbour Racing Club quickly setting a new attendance record. The social event of the year for the seaside city, the day brought first-timers and regular racegoers together, with the fashion stakes not forgotten by a long shot. Of course, for a lot of people, the serious race day action revolves around having a bet. Club officials expect on- and off-course betting on the Coffs Cup program to result in a turnover of about $3 million this year. With the event beamed live to North America and Asia for the first time this year, the Coffs Cup can claim to have come of age.
Exactly. I think that adds a lot of prestige to the carnival. And of course to have, Australia's #1 race caller, John Tapp, taking those pictures over with his magnificent calling, obviously it means a lot to Coffs Harbour, Australia and the state generally.
Overseas or in the stands, interest peaked around 3:45 p.m. with the running of the 1994 Winfield Coffs Harbour Gold Cup.
London Town, who got the rails run, but Surrender Now takes the lead from London Town. They're clear of Sun Gent, followed by Moon Chase and Big Risk down the outside from a long way back. Surrender Now and London Town. Surrender Now on the outside. London Town fighting back. Surrender Now just the leader. Look at Big Risk rocketing down the outside. Too late. Surrender Now won the Winfield Gold Cup.
Surrender Now took the cup from London Town and Big Risk, the Quinella 2190 trifecta $297.10. To Wyong and race 6, the Craig Ayton Memorial Handicap over 1100 metres.
About to appear, but nothing's going to take the run. It's Scrunch in front to the outside. Coming quickly now, Caravane. Then Cecil. Still in front, Scrunch. Caravane looks the only danger from Cecil and Fossiger's best. He's finding plenty in front, Scrunch. Scrunch is going too well for them over the final stages from Caravane. And Scrunch by a length and a half.
11, 7 and 4, the Quinella 175.60. And how about that trifecta, $1,642.50.
What Pat Clark had to tell the 11 directors last night was obviously encouraging. After 90 minutes, they unanimously voted to keep the club alive.
At this point in time, I can tell you that the club has a potential buyer.
The board received an offer from a major Australian company to purchase the club's land and buildings at Birmingham Gardens. Pat Clark says it'll take 5 days to finalise sale details, pending approval from Westpac, to whom the Breakers owe almost half of their $2.6 million debt. In Sydney today, Mr Clark met with Australian Soccer Federation Chairman John Constantine to detail the offer, which he believes proves the club's financial viability for the coming season, an ASF requirement to the Breakers playing in the NSL.
Newcastle Breakers are alive and well, and we will participate in this season.
Despite the apparent reprieve, the Breakers still need sponsorship dollars. Up for grabs the naming rights to the ground and a shirt sponsor. The club feels that last night's development consolidates its position, making it more attractive to the corporate world.
The short notice that we have to get out there and find sponsors, we'll break the sponsorship deals up and try to get more than one sponsor.
He says there's already been interest in corporate boxes.
Today we've already filled 2 of those, and one of our previous sponsors has advised that they're back on board again for next year.
With the season due to kick off in October, the Breakers coach will be announced next week. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Region 2 Netball Final Series began this morning at National Park, with 5 teams still in contention for this year's title. Gosford and Newcastle's number 2 side played each other in the final for the right to play Charlestown in the grand final. Gosford emerged the victor 26-23, giving itself a chance at reversing its major semi-final loss to Charlestown. Playing in the red, Gosford appeared to have benefited from the extra match, leading 13-8 at half-time. Unperturbed, Charlestown rallied, and with just 10 minutes remaining was a goal behind. However, their charge was halted, with Gosford goalkeeper Alison Urquhart proving a formidable opponent, while goal attack Sonia Walsh and shooter Sally Smith made the most of their opportunities. The 23-19 win was Gosford's first victory in Region 2 and now has them eyeing the Sydney competition.
That's the next step for us. We've got a lot of good representative players coming up. We had a few playing today, and I hope you'll be seeing us on Sydney TV as well.
With the epicentre around Cessnock, it seems Newcastle and the Lake region hasn't suffered too badly. While thousands of people noticed a shake flooding emergency workers with phone calls, there were no reports of major damage. The Newcastle Regional Museum measured the quake. While it rocked for 8 seconds, it was much shallower than the devastation of the quake more than 4.5 years ago.
The 1989 earthquake was down about 11 kilometres in the vicinity of Bullaroo. This one was much shallower, about 1 to 2 kilometres apparently. So that's a significant difference.
The 89 quake struck in the middle of a heavily populated area. 13 people were killed. Damage to property in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The Workers' Club destroyed. Most of Hamilton's Beaumont Street turned to rubble. Dr. Conrad Muller at Newcastle University says he wasn't expecting another quake quite so soon.
I would have thought that there would be about 40 to 50 or even 60 years between each seismic event.
For homeowners outside the epicentre, there is apparently no real need to worry about the safety of buildings. Experts believe there should be next to no effect on property. Meanwhile, Newcastle Council has confirmed the earthquake appeal funding is still available to anyone in trouble. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The earthquake struck first and hardest 10 kilometres south of Cessnock at Ellalong and Wallaby Gully. There was a stunned silence in the communities today, with neighbours gathering to come to terms with the night before.
All of a sudden, just the house just started shaking. It was terrifying, and the kids were screaming. I couldn't get off the lounge. Every time I'd go to get off the lounge, I'd fall back in it, and the fire was shaking. It only lasted a few seconds, probably 10 seconds or something, but longest 10 seconds in my life.
Sheer terror. Everything got shook and a big explosion and just everything started crashing down.
Well, I was a kid in the war in the UK, and it was exactly the same as the bomb, and I thought a bomb had hit the place. It was scary.
Emergency services say it was a miracle that nobody was killed. There wasn't even a serious injury. Experts say the latest tremor highlights the fact the Hunter is prone to earthquakes.
It is related to a shortening process where this particular part of the earth crust is being shortened, or as they said, squeezed together along a fault which we call reverse or thrust fault.
This Wallaby Gully home suffered the full wrath of the quake, which registered 5.5 on the Richter scale. The earthly wave shifted brickwork by more than 3 centimetres, with 2-metre-long cracks scarring every side of the house. It's believed the house, owned by David and Nolene Chapman, will have to be bulldozed. It's been a long line of bad fortune for the Chapman family. Their property has been devastated by drought. Now another natural disaster has taken their home. The owners were at Coffs Harbour on holidays last night, but their daughter was only minutes away from being trapped inside the house.
She'd taken me grandson home to his home up Sweetman's Creek, and she was back just after it happened. But they never felt a thing on the road, she said. There was one blessing, I think, that she was out of the house, because it was been a terrible sensation.
The building was insured, but relatives say it will be hard for the family to rebuild.
But even so, it's never the same. You know, you've got to go through it all again and start again. It's terrible. Yeah, but knowing her, she will.
The quake damaged nearly every home in Ellalong, although it's expected all buildings will survive. The local pub was the hardest hit. The earthquake hopefully the final insult to publican Mick Potts, who only took over the hotel 3 weeks ago.
Well, we had a few things go wrong. We plugged the washing machine in and it wouldn't work, and then we hand washed some clothes and we put them in the dryer, and the dryer caught on fire, and my wife went down to Newcastle to pick some stuff up and she got a flat tyre, and then the septic wasn't working, and I said to Debbie, my wife, I said, there's only one thing that can bloody happen here. I said, there's an earthquake. Sure enough, about 10 days later, down she comes.
Most of the hotel bedrooms were occupied last night, but thankfully not this one when a slab of plaster was shaken from the wall onto a pillow. To top it all off, the locals can't even drown their sorrows, with the quake taking the fizz out of the hotel's gas bottles, making it a pub with no beer. Cessnock Council reacted quickly to the crisis with an emergency meeting in the town this afternoon. Mayor Marie Callaghan says council will do everything it can for quake victims, although the damage was a lot less than they could have expected.
We've done very well, quite frankly. Cessnock has fared better than most areas because we're not high-rise, because our homes are timber and built on piers as against concrete slabs. I think we've fared better than most areas in Australia would have.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
After last Thursday's announcement that the embattled Newcastle Breakers had been handed a lifeline, the club has received expressions of interest for sponsorship. But like the proposed buyer of the club's land and facilities, those negotiations are being kept a secret. The intended purchaser, described as being soccer friendly, is working out the finer details of the sale with the club.
Once they are completed, I'm sure that we will be in a position to announce that the sale has been successful.
That's expected sometime next week, as is the announcement of a coach and new recruits. The Breakers keen to secure the services of 2 or 3 key players with an eye to strengthening their midfield. Warren Spink, who was one of 8 players contracted to the club, has returned from playing in Malaysia, while teammate Darren Stewart is still overseas, but has indicated he is prepared to take a pay cut to assist the club's search for new talent.
Darren has instructed his Newcastle-based manager to renegotiate his contract, and he's going to negotiate his contract down, and hopefully that will assist the club in our financial plight that we have at the moment.
Okay, and finally, already a good response so from...
The bandit walked into this general store at New Lambton, brandishing an unknown object, possibly a knife or gun. The owner ran and fetched her pet dog, which chased the intruder from the Orchard Town Road store. The bandit, aged in his late teens or early 20s, escaped with a small amount of cash. 20 police swarmed the surrounding streets, interviewing neighbours who may have seen the man. The Westpac helicopter sweeps low over city streets in a bid to find the thief, but reports of the bandit in nearby bushland shifted the search to Blackbutt Reserve a few kilometres away. Armed police brought in sniffer dogs to track the man down. Late this afternoon, police called on the public for help, seeking any information in relation to the robbery. The shop owners, the Paddock family, are happy that nobody was hurt and have hailed their 5-year-old collie English Sheepdog Cross a hero. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
After being knocked out of the Lightning series by the Cannons in Sydney and Canberra over the weekend, the Falcons received some good news at training, with Derek Rucker and Terry Dozier returning to the court. Both were injured during the recent All-Star series, but will be fit to play the 2 matches in Perth against visiting American team Athletes in Action.
Everett Stevens is going to be playing with Athletes in Action, and Mario Donaldson, who plays with the King, 2 good mates of mine, and it'll be looking forward to playing against them in a fun game.
All but the injured Paul Simpson will go to Perth, which will be the Falcons' last match before they resume their NBL campaign against Canberra at home on Friday week. Currently 8th in the league, and with the aim of winning 5 of their remaining 8 matches, the Perth trip isn't being taken lightly.
There are key games for us in our preparations for the last half of the season. We'll have basically our full team with the exception of Paul Simpson, so this is a real good test for us.
It's going to be important for this team. We really got to get our thing going, get in rhythm for the run to the playoffs. So we're going to take this serious.